Speaking of heavy hitters, it's Jim Lee. How you doing, Jim?
Doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. That's some good hitting. It looks like how I might try and do it because I don't know how to hit. But you know,
Oh man, I don't know how to hit. I can fake it till you make it, right?
I think that's the only way. My partner, she winds me up about it a little bit because she can do a bit of the old martial arts and stuff, and I'm like, you know, but what can you do?
Well, I'm exaggerating. I lifetime martial artist. I go to Team Robinson Mixed Martial Arts. My 13-year-old daughter and my 6-year-old daughter are in MMA. My 13-year-old already has an orange belt, and she could take out most guys I know that are adults.
Wow. And hey, that's one heck of an accent, isn't it? It's very exotic to me. Whereabouts are you?
Sumter, South Carolina, and the good old America.
I do declare. That's the only thing I know how to say in American.
Bless
no one ever
your
says
heart.
that now. They still say I do declare.
I haven't heard it in quite well. I think I did one time at a fishing pier down in Redneckville, but yeah, it's pretty rare.
You can't say that now, I don't think. I don't know. But you're tracking climate change. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Oh, we got Greenville in the house. Nice.
Yeah,
well, I'm, a lifetime student of weather. I was in Air Force Junior ROTC. I took a year of weather in high school. I do not have a diploma, degree, any special piece of paper to hold up to say that, hey, I'm the best at this. But I do have about close to, let's say right now I'm sitting around 200 citations on Google Scholar from MIT, Harvard, the United Nations Environmental Program, regarding the history of weather control. I have a website specifically about it, weathermodificationhistory.com. I also have a blog, and I create maps. You can go to connect.climateviewer.com, connect.climateviewer.com. I'm Southern, so I slur, I guess. And you could find all my stuff. I'm Climate Viewer on YouTube. But basically, I've spent the last 14 years studying the history of weather control from about the 1850s to present. And I see a commonality, a recurring theme that people that I hear today, everything is climate change, of course. And that's why I chose the name Climate Viewer. I not only view the climate change climate, I view the political climate. That's why I talk about pollution, privacy, and propaganda. The three are intimately linked. If you talk about pollution, someone is likely to violate your privacy because they hate activists. And if you're effective, they will make propaganda about you to shut you up. I see that as a common theme among most activists. Once they become effective, at first there's an old saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And that's a typical propaganda scenario. So there's a lot of propaganda surrounding the topic of geoengineering, especially. And I like to give people conspiracy facts. So I rely on multiple, to give you an example, climateviewer.com, the articles I have on there, probably about 384. I have well over 80,000 reference links just on that website alone. Of the 660 maps on my climateviewer.org, there's probably well over another 80,000 reference links. And weathermodificationhistory.com, there's around 180 timeline entries, starting at 1850 all the way to present. The thing about weather modification history that's special is everything's in MLA format. So if you're a college student out there that wants to cheat on a paper really quickly, you could just go there and get the references, copy paste them into your article. You're done. I did all the work for you, and everything I do is open source and free of charge. So I just accept donations as thank you. This is my service to my children because I don't want them to grow up in a world where they can't see the stars. And that's where we're headed. In a geoengineering scenario, the idea is to rapidly cool the planet by blocking out sunlight. For those who don't know, this started, it was coined in 1977 by Cesare Marchetti, but he was more talking about sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere. But in 1994, Mount Pinatubo erupted, and they noticed, the technocrats, scientists, globalists, they noticed that the planet cooled rapidly. So their idea was to mimic volcanoes like the Mount Pinatubo eruption by injecting sulfur and other chemicals into the stratosphere, and that should cool the planet off. So that was where solar radiation management, geoengineering, the idea was born. But what they totally forgot about was this has been going on since the early 50s with commercial aviation, commonly referred to as chemtrails online. Planes have been farting all over the sky, spraying nanoparticles of metals all around the world. There's been a buildup of these metals. Most people may not have noticed, but the sun has turned from yellow to white. I get a lot of questions about that, and that's called sky brightening, and it's attributable to ice haze generated by water vapor sticking to these nanoparticles of metal that are building up in the atmosphere. It's what the scientists want to call accidental geoengineering or inadvertent geoengineering. So between aircraft accidentally geoengineering for 60 plus years, ship tracks, which is international shipping, all that crap from China that we buy here in America in our Walmarts, come over on these massive ships that have been burning what's called bunker fuel. And it's loaded with sulfur and metals. And they create marine stratocumulus clouds that make the chemtrails you see over your house look tiny in comparison. If you look at them on a satellite, they'll blow your mind. So between these two major sources of climate control, I tell people, don't talk to me about climate change unless you know about the climate changers.
Well, I mean, we should say, chemtrails, a lot of the scientific community say that's not a real thing, don't they? I mean, I don't have any awe in this because I don't, I don't know any of this stuff, but just to say that there are different opinions out there, right?
Well, it's all in how you discuss things. And I have an ability to mold my etymology, my semantics to the person I'm talking to. So when I'm talking to the public, I generally will say chemtrails are plane farts or artificial clouds. If I'm talking to Dr. Rangasai Halthori, who's the head of the Federal Aviation Administration's Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative, I made the argument to him that I said, Dr. Halthori, you walk outside, you point at the sky, and you say, contrail. And meanwhile, Andrew walks out in the sky and points at the sky and he says, chemtrail. You're both pointing at the exact same thing. You are both right. And he had this aha moment. I said, so whenever you have someone call the Federal Aviation Administration, they're complaining about chemtrails. Why do you respond with chemtrails are not a thing? That is just a conspiracy theory. Instead of being honest and saying, we here at the Federal Aviation Administration take chemtrails seriously because they are a serious climate change concern. In fact, the chemtrails turn into cirrus clouds. They are called contrail-induced cirrus clouds. They trap heat over 5,000 times more than all the CO2 ever emitted from aviation. Therefore, we are actively working on using biofuels for contrail control because it is a serious concern. So we understand your concern. And he was like, yeah, we could probably work on our communications a little better on that. So it totally depends on how you talk about the subject, how much you understand the subject. And I've made a public challenge to any scientist on the planet. I don't care who you are, how many degrees you've got. I will debate them live, anywhere, anytime, with any moderator, and I will gladly spank their hiney till it's red.
I'm sure,
because you
but
can't play that.
Yeah.
You can't play the semantic game.
Because what I'm reading is contrails are streaks of condensed water vapor created in the air by an airplane or rocket at high altitudes. And that the conspiracy theory is the suggestion that it has long-lasting, lingering additional substances. That's not me arguing with you, by the way, because as I say, I have no idea. It's just
I'm very familiar with what you're reading. So here's the rub.
Okay.
Condensating on what? That's really all you got to do is go, okay, well, if it's just a condensation trail that eventually turns into a cirrus cloud, which is an ice cloud, because that's what everybody's missing. That's why I use the hashtag cirrus clouds matter. Mm-hmm. Because people don't understand that whether you call it a chemtrail, whether you call it a contrail, whether I call it a plane fart, once it's fans out and it covers the entire sky, it is no longer any of those things. It is now a cirrus cloud. So to make a cloud, you need three things. You need water vapor, you need a cloud seed, and you need some form of ionizing radiation to make the first two stick together, like static electricity, like galactic cosmic rays. So what is the cloud seed that's making all of these clouds that we're seeing from behind the planes that are fanning out and blocking out the sun? Well, Ulrich Lohmann from Finland flew up into the clouds and found that 75% of the cloud seeds in cirrus clouds were man-made metals. Mm-hmm. So there really is no, conspiracy, that hasn't already been proven here. The only conspiracy in the chemtrail world boils down to a single word, and that's intent. So a lot of people focus heavily on intent instead of on just the facts. If you focus on intent, then you're going, well, they're doing it because of X, Y, and Z. They're doing it for depopulation. They're doing it to turn the frogs gay. They're doing it for all these reasons. That's my Alex Jones. They're doing it for all these reasons. Instead of speculating on all that, it would be much better to just focus on what are the facts. The facts are that planes are farting out aluminum, titanium, zirconium, vanadium, molybdenum, copper, nickel, lead. I could go on. A lot of freaking metals, and all of these are nanoparticles of metals. They are creating clouds. Clouds have a problem, and your people, big buckets of chicken, BBC News article, terrestrial astronomy will be extinct by 2050 because of commercial aviation.
Wow.
Meaning we may never see the stars again. Go ahead.
I want to get. I did that is worrying, but I want to get onto a question because I missed the opportunity to do so in the last interview, and I got one from A Nexus who says, "Who or what countries or agencies are doing weather control?" And Jake Ford adds, "And why?"
If you go to climateviewer.com right now, on the front page is an article titled 50 Years of the United Nations Tracking Weather Modification Projects Worldwide. And not only did we get the original reports from the United Nations expert team on weather modification, which shows all of the countries back to, I think, like 1959. I also went into Google Earth and mapped those out. I had a friend of mine, George Stiller, help me do this huge project of gathering all this data. But the simple answer is damn near every country on the planet is involved in cloud seeding at a minimum. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The tools in the weather control, toolbox today include things like cloud ionization, lasers, sounding rockets, ionospheric heaters like HARP. By the way, there's 5 ionospheric heaters on the planet. There's HARP in Alaska. There's the Arecibo high frequency array in Puerto Rico. There's the Tromsø array in Norway. The Sura ionospheric heater in Russia. And the Jica Peru high frequency array, it's actually considered a super darn, which is a super dual auroral radar network. Anyway, but it's 4.5 million freaking watts. This is called space weather modification. Similar to what we do on the ground with planes and ground-based cloud seeding, we put chemicals into the sky to make it rain water. Ionospheric heaters inject shear Alvin waves and magnetosonic waves, electromagnetic missiles into space to do plasma seeding to make it precipitate electrons or create artificial aurora, among other things, like creating extremely low frequency waves, using the polar electrojet as a virtual antenna in the sky and attenuating it. So we're basically using every layer of our atmosphere as either a resource for, radio frequency, water, or as a weapon system. And the weapon system part is the one that concerns me the most. Most people aren't familiar. Well, a good portion of people have heard of Operation Popeye. Have you? Okay.
No.
So Lyndon Baines Johnson was our president back in the 60s.
Right.
He said, it lays the predicate and foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather. And he who controls the weather will control the world. 1962. It gets creepier. Wow. Then he goes on to talk about space weather modification. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides and raise the levels of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperate climates to frigid. He said this. Now, the sea level rise one kind of sticks out to me in this whole climate change debate. But Lyndon Johnson then went on to do weather warfare in Vietnam over Laos and the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This involved a WC-130, it's a weather plane, propellers, and some RF-4s. There was only about 19 individuals who were privy to this. Not even the Secretary of Defense of the United States was aware of this. Henry Kissinger, the CIA, the United States Air Force, and the United States Navy conducted weather warfare over Vietnam for 5 years. From 1967 through 1972, it was called Operation Popeye. Then when it became public, as a result of Jack Anderson, a reporter, seeing a note on Lyndon Johnson's desk, he originally published this in the Pentagon Papers. They changed the name to Operation Motor Pool. When that became public, they changed it to Operation Intermediary Compatriot. But regardless, this was weather warfare 1967 through 1972. They sprayed silver iodide and lead iodide into the monsoon rains to muddy. Wow. The quote was, "Make mud, not war." As a result of this was published in the New York Times. It started getting published all over the world. There were hearings in America here. As a result, the Environmental Modification Convention, or weather warfare ban, was signed by the United Nations in 1976 and ratified in 1978. So there's actually a law on the books called ENMOD, ENMOD, the Environmental Modification Convention, or the Prohibition of Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques. Thank God they shortened that to ENMOD. So this weather warfare ban has been on the books since 1978. They've never made a way to verify it. Similar to when they banned upper atmospheric nuclear explosions with the Limited Test Ban Treaty, they made infrasound recorders and seismographs. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization made a system of sensors worldwide so that when Kim Jong-un fires off a nuke in North Korea, we immediately know, because we can triangulate that and say, right here is where the nuke went off. The problem is with weather warfare, yes, we banned weather warfare. It does not ban weather modification. It does not ban geoengineering. It doesn't even ban what HARP and these ionospheric heaters are doing, because in the paperwork it says long lasting or severe and has a cause of damage as a result of the weather manipulation. So how do we prove that? And I've come up with a solution I call the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. Similar to the chemtrail problem, I don't believe in talking about an issue without having a pragmatic solution. So one of the things that I did was in 2015, I went to the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. I went to the Environmental Protection Agency, and I went to a public hearing on chemtrails, and I laid down the law for 10 minutes straight. Everything I said in 2015 has come true. Jasper Kirkby from CERN clarified everything I said, and his cloud project, cloud cosmics leading outdoor droplets, whole lot of things like that. But what I'm looking for with the Environmental Modification Accountability Act is accountability and verification. So a prior notice worldwide that you're going to modify the weather, and sensors to catch people that don't tell us they're going to do it. And that's the only way we're going to go into the future with any sort of certainty or safety, is that we know and we trust but verify. And you can find out more about my solution at climateviewer.com/nmod. That's ENMOD, climateviewer.com/nmod.
So Ray J is saying the Chinese use weather manipulating during the Olympics and publicly stated so. Is that right?
This is correct. In 2008 at the Beijing Olympics, the Chinese said they had an open air dome stadium, and they said, we're going to make sure it doesn't rain on that. So for those who don't understand how the Chinese manipulate the weather, the People's Liberation Army is in control of the weather in China. They typically fire rockets, and the rockets explode. They dump silver iodide into the clouds. But for the Beijing Olympics, they really wanted to up their game. So not only were they firing rockets, they had discussions of dumping liquid nitrogen into clouds. With weather modification and cloud seeding, you can not only make it rain more and cause floods, you can cause drought. This is called overseeding. So if you put too many seeds in the sky, there's not enough water vapor to stick to any individual seed to grow a raindrop large enough to fall. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a proper mixture of seeds and water. So if you put too many seeds in the sky, you can shut rainfall off. They attempted this and failed miserably. But this isn't the only time this has happened. In Chernobyl, when the Chernobyl meltdown occurred, the radioactive fallout was headed to Moscow. So the Russian military flew planes up and overseeded the sky over Belarus and made all of that radioactive fallout rain on Belarus, and they warned nobody. You can verify this by looking at the radiation fallout charts from Chernobyl. Big round circle around the Chernobyl reactor, big round circle in Belarus. Plenty of documentation on weathermodificationhistory.com from scientists, journalists everywhere. They did not want those radioactive clouds to reach Moscow, so they created an artificial drought by raining out all of that before it reached them.
Bloody hell, that's incredible. I can't believe all this. I got A Nexus again saying the sun will modify our planet with fluxes in its magnetism without the help of Earth's petty tyrants playing with the weather. When our poles shift because of the sun, the crust of the Earth slips off the mantle and the flood happens all over again. That's quite worrying. Is that right?
So we have this thing. So the sun goes through minimums, maximums. This is one of my main gripes with the IPCC, is that they, up until this latest, they've done like 5 assessments. I think they're in their 6th now. They have not included solar anything into their climate models. Their climate models are like COVID models, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have enough information, you can't predict anything. Hell, they can't predict the weather 7 days from now in my hometown. So how could they possibly know what's going to happen in 50 years, let alone how technology is going to transform that? But he's right. Ben Davidson, I'm aware of Ben Davidson as well, suspicious observer, known him for over 10 years. So galactic solar, the grand solar minimum, we have a 13-year period from solar minimum to solar maximum. And then we have a much longer period where the sun goes through grand solar maximums to grand solar minimums. Right now, we are having a declining sun cycle each cycle, and we're expected to have a grand solar minimum around 2034. Our next solar minimum is in 2025. So during these periods, what happens is our ionosphere is actually weakened. Our ionosphere is like the shield around the Starship Enterprise, okay? It's powered by the sun. And what it does is it protects us from galactic solar cosmic rays and all of these things from space. Whenever the sun is weak, our ionosphere is weak and more galactic cosmic rays can penetrate. This leads to larger cloud formation, stronger hurricanes, more severe weather. Similarly, whenever there are less sunspots on the sun, when the disk is clear, we typically have larger earthquakes and bigger volcanic eruptions because there's an energy exchange that happens between the sun and the earth. Kind of getting off topic, but I'm fascinated by all these things.
It's interesting. It's interesting. We've only got a minute or two left, so just give us your website again, and if there's a Twitter or anywhere else people could be following you and all of that.
If you go to connect.climateviewer.com, it's like my link tree. It has all three of my websites, my BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, all my social medias. There's a lot to dig in there. I've had people who've been in my websites for over 5 years. They're like, I barely scratched the surface. So I'm a bit of a nerd. I take a lot of notes and I remember all of them.
Oh, fascinating. It's been great talking to you, Jim, with your wonderful accent and even more wonderful knowledge of all of this stuff. Guys, go and support Jim. You know, always support our guests. He's been wonderful tonight. And thank you again, Jim.
Well, Andrew, as we say around here, I like the way you talk.
I like the way you talk.
I like the way you talk.
I like the way you. I can't really do it. I wish I could do accents better. But
I wish I could do that too, but I'm terrible at it.
That's not bad, you know. There's definitely been worse than that. That was pretty good.
Okay.
Oh well, thanks, Jim. You might have to leave because I don't know how to kick you off.